This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
Introduction. A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Marcus Garvey. The arduous task of overthrowing Jim Crow codes and legislation marked one of the first strides toward the modern struggle for ethnic equality in American society and required nearly a century of struggle. That effort spawned a multitude of heroic African-American activists, but it is remembered in large part for the work of two iconic African-American men of stature. Much like their later counterparts, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, the debate between gradual integration through temporary accommodation and overtly insistent activism was led by Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. Through the last years of the 19th century, Washington's gentler approach of enhancing black prospects through vocational education, largely accomplished with white permission and funds, seemed the popular choice. His legacy can be sensed in King's subsequent willingness to extend an olive branch to white Americans in a sense of unity, although Washington's propensity for accommodation held no place in King's ministry. Ultimately, however, the vision that oversaw the creation of the Tuskegee Institute faded in the early 20th century as black intellectualism and stiffening resolve came to the fore. This side's greatest proponent, William Egbert Burghardt Du Bois, still stands among the greatest and most controversial minds of any black leader in this country. The third and most improbable approach towards American civil rights for black citizens blended the beliefs of Washington and Du Bois, and it was spearheaded by global activist Marcus Aurelius Garvey. The Jamaican began his career as an activist with a devotion to Washington's path, but he subsequently leaned to the alternative and beyond. Beyond the worldview of both colleagues, Marcus Garvey's bigger-than-life scheme was to establish a black-owned and managed shipping line to transport much of America's black population back to Africa. Repatriation of black residents to the African continent had been proposed and debated before, even by Abraham Lincoln, but Garvey's second and equally prodigious vision proposed that once the African diaspora returned to its homeland, an immense empire would assume rule over the continent, housing black cultures from around the globe. This realization of racial segregation would be a boon to black and white societies, at peace but thriving in distinctly separate cultures and economies from the white world. No other black leader wielded such an epic influence on African societies as Garvey, the gregarious visionary who had never set foot on the African continent in his lifetime, but despite this, he was one of the few notable names from the West known to Africans. Garvey very nearly accomplished the impossible while fending off the American federal government's attempts to frame him on any charge that would disarm his vast army of devotees. Booker T. Washington's legacy is based on the continuing success of Tuskegee, and Du Bois co-founded the NAACP and left volumes of brilliant writings and exhortations to black America. But only Garvey inspired the first important nationalist movement of African Americans in North America. Central to the many Pan-African Congresses, he founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the African Communities League, and the Black Star Shipping Line. Despite being Caribbean-born, Garvey made his headquarters in New York City, and at the peak of his influence was considered the most powerful man in Harlem. In his uplifting speeches on the subject of black pride, his exhortations cast him as the father of the modern Black is Beautiful movement. Washington, Du Bois, and Garvey went to great lengths to promote the beauty of African culture in a white society, but it was Garvey who turned separatist as the black condition persisted, preaching a philosophy of social, political, and economic freedom separate from white participation or influence. The UNIA and ACL, Fraternal Orders of Black Nationalists, were created to that end. Through his work, Garvey commanded the ear of the masses, millions in number. Marcus Garvey, the life and legacy of the Jamaican political leader who championed Pan-Africanism, chronicles the life and work that made him one of the 20th century's most influential figures. Along with pictures of important people, places, and events, you will learn about Garvey like never before.